the Galactic Council expected diplomats. They expected clean hulls and polite words. What arrived instead were human ships scarred, burned, and still carrying the silence of the dead. No speeches were needed. The damage told the story better than any words ever could. The arrival of the wounded fleet, the unexpected visitors, the Galactic Assembly floated in the silence of space. A magnificent structure of crystal and metal that housed representatives from 400 civilizations. Today was supposed to be ordinary. Ambassador Kelvin of the Arconian Empire reviewed trade agreements while his assistant organized data tablets. Around the circular chamber, other delegates chatted quietly, discussing shipping routes and mineral rights. This session had been so uneventful that nearly half the representatives had already left for lunch. Then the alarm screamed. Every screen in the chamber blazed red. The central holographic display showed sensor readings that made no sense. 32 vessels had just emerged from hyperspace at the system's boundary. They carried no identification codes. They broadcast no standard greetings. They simply appeared like ghosts materializing from the void. Chancellor Mordex, leader of the assembly, rose from his elevated platform. His scaled face showed confusion rather than concern. Identify the approaching fleet, he commanded the control center. The technicians worked frantically. Images began to form on the main display. What they revealed made the entire chamber fall silent. The ships were clearly military vessels, built for war rather than exploration. But their condition shocked everyone present. Massive holes punctured their hulls. Entire sections were missing, held together by what looked like emergency welding. Scorched metal covered every surface. Some vessels leaked atmosphere, trailing clouds of frozen gas behind them as they limped forward. "Those markings," whispered Ambassador Kelvin, his voice tight with recognition. "Those are human ships." The word rippled through the chamber like electricity. Humans. The assembly remembered them well. 3 years ago, a delegation from Earth had stood in this very chamber, requesting membership in the Galactic Assembly. They have been a young species, barely capable of traveling to nearby stars. Their technology was primitive by galactic standards. Their lifespans were shockingly brief. Their history was filled with conflicts against their own kind. The council had deliberated for 1 full day before delivering their decision. Humanity was too immature for galactic society. Too aggressive? Too dangerous? Come back in 200 years, they had said. Give yourselves time to evolve beyond violence. The human delegates had accepted the rejection with quiet dignity and left. No one had heard from them since. Now they had returned, and they had brought a fleet of dying warships, the commanders. Request Chancellor Mordex recovered his composure quickly. Open a communication channel. Let us hear what these humans have to say. The main screen flickered. A woman's face appeared, filling the display. She wore a dark military uniform that looked like it had been cleaned recently, but still showed permanent stains. Her face was thin, with deep lines around her eyes and gray streaking through her black hair. She looked like someone who had not slept properly in years. "This is Commander Elena Torres, of the United Earth Defense Fleet," she said, her voice steady despite obvious exhaustion. "I am requesting an emergency session of the Galactic Assembly. The matter cannot wait." Chancellor Mordic spread his forearms in a gesture of bureaucratic patience. "Commander Torres, you appear without announcement, without proper authorization. The Assembly requires notice before. The Devourers are coming." Torres interrupted, her voice cutting through the formalities like a blade. "We have been fighting them for 2 years. We have lost 14 colonies and 1.7 billion people. We stopped them, but some may have escaped. If they reach this sector, every world you represent will be consumed." The chamber exploded in noise. Representatives shouted questions. Others demanded explanations. Several called for security forces. A few simply stared at the human commander in disbelief. Mordex slammed his ceremonial staff against the floor repeatedly. "Trying to restore order?" "Silence. Commander Torres, the Assembly is aware of no threat called the Devourers. What evidence do you have for these extraordinary claims?" Torres's expression did not change. 2 years ago, we sent 17 distress calls to the assembly. We described the attacks. We provided sensor data. We begged for assistance. Do you know what response we received? A junior aide whispered something to Chancellor Mordix. His face darkened. Your messages were filed. They appeared to describe an internal human conflict. Filed, Torres repeated, her voice carrying an edge that made several delegates shift uncomfortably. 1.7 billion humans died while you filed our screams for help. The chamber fell completely silent. The story of Blood Torres continued. Her words precise and emotionless, like someone reciting facts to avoid feeling them. After you rejected our membership 3 years ago, we expanded in a different direction. We found habitable worlds in the outer reaches, far from established trade routes. We built colonies. We grew. We were creating our own civilization, separate from yours. A holographic map appeared beside Torres's image, showing a cluster of star systems far from assembly space. Small icons represented human colonies, peaceful settlements connected by thin travel routes. 26 months ago, our furthest colony detected something approaching from deep space. A massive object moving toward our territory. We sent exploration ships to investigate. Torres paused, taking a slow breath. Those ships never returned. 3 days later, the colony went silent. When we arrived with our defense fleet, we found this. The image changed. It showed a planet that had once been green and blue. Now it was gray. The surface crawled with strange structures that pulsed with sickly light. Dark shapes moved across the landscape like living shadows. New horizon, Torres said quietly. Population 800,000. The Devourers harvested every living thing on that world in less than 40 hours. Plants, animals, people, everything. They process organic matter into biomass that they use to grow more of themselves. Another image appeared. Creatures that defied description. Part machine, part organic, all horror. They moved in swarms, millions of them, consuming everything in their path. We tried to communicate with them, Torres continued. We offered peace, resources, cooperation. They did not respond with words. They responded with attacks. They do not negotiate. They do not retreat. They only consume. More images followed, each one worse than the last. Colonies burning. Ships being torn apart. Civilians fleeing through streets filled with nightmares. The delegates watched in growing horror as humanity's war unfolded before them. We lost 4 colonies in the first 6 months, Torres said. Our military was not prepared for this kind of warfare. The Devourers adapt to every weapon we use. Energy beams that destroy them once become useless within hours. They learn from every battle, becoming stronger and more dangerous. Ambassador Kelvin found his voice. How do you survive? If these creatures are as powerful as you claim, how is humanity still alive? Torres met his eyes directly. We survived by becoming something we never wanted to be. We built weapons that violate every ethical principle we once held. We created biological agents designed to kill on a massive scale. We developed tactics that cost millions of lives but saved billions. She paused. We became monsters to fight monsters. The warning, the images on the screen shifted one final time, showing a massive structure floating in space. It dwarfed anything the assembly had ever constructed. Dark energy pulsed from its core, and around it swarmed countless devourer creatures. This was their hive mind, Torres said. Their central intelligence. Everything they did originated from this structure. It took us 18 months to locate it. It took another 6 months to build a weapon capable of destroying it. The screen showed a blinding explosion that seemed to consume space itself. 73 ships participated in the final assault. 21 survived. But we destroyed the hive mind. We killed the central intelligence coordinating the Devourers. Chancellor Mordix leaned forward. Then the threat is eliminated. Why come to us now? Because we are not certain we killed all of them, Torres replied. Devourer scouts operate semi-independently. Some may have been outside the destruction radius. If even a few survived, they will rebuild. It took them thousands of years to grow this powerful before. Next time, they will not make the mistake of attacking an isolated species first. Next time, they will come for everyone. Torres's image grew larger on the screen, her exhausted face filling the display. We came here for 3 reasons. First, to warn you. Second, to offer our knowledge and military expertise. Third, to remind you that we begged for your help and you refused to give it. 1.7 billion humans are dead because you filed our messages and ignored them. She straightened in her chair, every movement showing the weight she carried. We fought your war for you. We paid a price in blood that you never even knew was being demanded. Now we are asking you to prepare, because if the Devourers return, humanity will not stand alone at the edge of darkness again. Next time, the darkness will come for all of you. The transmission ended. The chamber remained silent as the blood-stained human fleet waited in orbit. 32 damaged vessels that had fought a war the galaxy never knew was happening. For the first time in 5,000 years, the Galactic Assembly had absolutely no idea what to say about the price of survival. Demand for truth. The Galactic Assembly chamber had never been so crowded. Within 12 hours of Commander Torres's transmission, every member civilization had sent their highest-ranking officials. The usual assembly of 400 had swollen to nearly 2,000 representatives. Ships arrived from across the galaxy, carrying military advisors, scientists, and intelligence experts. Everyone wanted to see the evidence. Everyone wanted to know if humanity's story was true. Commander Torres stood alone on the central platform, surrounded by a sea of alien faces. Some showed curiosity, others suspicion, and many showed outright fear. She had not slept since arriving at the assembly station. Her uniform, despite being her cleanest, still bore faded stains that would never wash out. She carried a data storage device in her hand, a small cylinder that contained 2 years of recorded horror. Chancellor Mordex opened the emergency session with formal words, but his voice trembled slightly. Commander Torres, the Assembly has gathered to evaluate your claims. You speak of an enemy we have never encountered, a war we never witnessed. Before we can respond, we must see proof. We must understand what humanity faced and what humanity did. Torres nodded slowly. I understand your need for evidence. What I am about to show you is not easy to watch. Some of your species may find it disturbing, but you asked for truth, and truth is what I will give you. She activated the data cylinder. The chamber's holographic systems came alive, filling the space above the central platform with images that would haunt every witness for the rest of their lives. The reality of war. The first recordings came from humanity's early encounters with the Devourers. A human patrol ship, the EDS Vigilant, detected unusual readings near a mining outpost. The crew approached cautiously, their sensors showing massive energy signatures. Then the Devourers attacked. The recordings showed creatures pouring out of the darkness like a living flood. They tore through the ship's hull with claws and weapons that seemed to grow from their own bodies. The crew fought back with standard energy weapons, and at first they worked. Devourer creatures exploded or fell back damaged, but then something terrible happened. The Devourers began to change. Their bodies shifted, adapted, evolved in real time. Within minutes, the same weapons that had killed them before became completely ineffective. The creatures learned. They improved. They became immune to every attack the humans tried. The Vigilant was destroyed in 14 minutes. All 62 crew members died. The recording ended with the screams of the last survivor as the Devourers broke through the bridge door. The assembly watched in silence. Several delegates had already left the chamber. Unable to continue watching, Torres spoke quietly over the images. This is what we faced. An enemy that learns from every battle. An enemy that adapts to every weapon. The ancient civilizations that fell to the Devourers thousands of years ago failed because they could not innovate faster than the Devourers could evolve. We almost failed for the same reason. The recordings continued, showing colony after colony falling to the devourer swarms. New Horizon, population 800,000. Sanctuary, population 1.2 million. Eden's Gate, population 600,000. Each world followed the same pattern. The devourers arrived. The humans fought. The humans lost. The worlds were stripped of all life, leaving behind gray wastelands crawling with alien structures. After we lost the fifth colony, our government made a decision, Torres said, her voice flat and distant. We could not fight a conventional war. We had to become unconventional. We had to build things we never wanted to build. The weapons of desperation. The holographic display shifted to show human laboratories. Scientists worked behind containment fields, handling substances that glowed with unnatural colors. Engineers built devices that looked more like biological organisms than machines. Military officers reviewed data with expressions of profound distress. Project Nightfall, Torres explained. A biological weapon designed specifically to target devourer physiology. It took 9 months to develop. We tested it on captured devourer specimens. The results were effective. The recording showed a containment cell. Inside, 3 devourer creatures moved with predatory grace. Scientists introduced a fine mist into the chamber. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then the creatures began to convulse. Their bodies broke down at the cellular level, dissolving into pools of gray liquid within 2 minutes. We deployed Nightfall on 3 devourer-occupied worlds, Torres continued. We killed approximately 800 million devourer organisms in the initial strike. We believed we had found our answer. The display changed again, showing the same 3 worlds 6 days later. The surfaces were covered with devourer creatures, but these were different. They moved faster. Their bodies had changed structure. And when human ships attempted another Nightfall deployment, the creatures showed complete immunity. The devourers adapted to our biological weapon in less than 1 week, Torres said. Worse, they incorporated its properties into their own biology. They learned to produce Nightfall themselves. They used our own weapon against us. We lost the colony of Haven to our own creation. 300,000 people killed by something we built to save them. Ambassador Kelvin stood, his voice shaking. You created a weapon of mass destruction, used it, and then lost control of it. Do you understand what you have done? Torres turned to face him directly. Yes, Ambassador. I understand perfectly. We created something terrible, it failed, and people died because of it. Do you know what we did next? We tried again. We built something worse because the alternative was watching our entire species be consumed. The recording showed more weapons. Gravity bombs that crushed everything in a 3-kilometer radius. Nanite swarms that disassembled matter at the molecular level. Viral agents that rewrote genetic codes. Each weapon was more horrifying than the last, and each one ultimately failed as the devourers adapted. By the end of the first year, we had lost 9 colonies and over 1 billion people, Torres said. Our military had been reduced to a fraction of its original strength. Our resources were nearly exhausted. We had one strategy left. The final gambit, the holographic display, showed a star system unlike any the assembly had seen. At its center was a massive structure, larger than most planets, pulsing with dark energy. Around it orbited thousands of smaller structures, each one producing streams of devourer creatures that flowed outward like rivers. The hive mind, Torres said. The central intelligence coordinating all devourer activity. We found it by tracking their communication patterns across space. It took 18 months of constant warfare to trace the signals back to their source. Once we found it, we knew what we had to do. The recording showed the preparation for humanity's final assault. Every surviving warship was mobilized. Engineers worked around the clock building weapons specifically for this single battle. Soldiers trained for scenarios they knew would likely kill them. Families said goodbye to loved ones who would never return. Operation Last Dawn, Torres said quietly. Every resource we had left, every person who could fight, every weapon we had developed. We sent everything we had to that system, knowing that if we failed, humanity would be extinct within months. The battle that followed was beyond anything the Assembly had witnessed. 73 human ships entered the system against millions of devourer creatures. The space between planets became a churning mass of explosions, energy weapons, and dying ships. Human vessels fought with desperate fury, pushing their systems beyond safety limits, sacrificing themselves to clear paths for others. At the center of the chaos, one ship broke through the devourer defenses. The Aegis Prometheus, commanded by Captain Michael Chun, carried humanity's final weapon. The recording showed Chen's final message, broadcast to the entire fleet. "This is Captain Chun. We are beginning our attack run. If anyone is listening after today, remember that we did not choose this war. We did not want to become what we became. But we refused to die quietly. We refused to let our species end. For Earth, for humanity, for everyone who cannot fight for themselves." The Prometheus reached the hive mind structure and deployed its weapon. The recording showed a brief moment of brilliant light, followed by a shockwave that consumed everything in the system. The hive mind, the support structures, the devourer swarms, and 21 human ships, including the Prometheus, were all erased in an instant. The silence in the assembly chamber was absolute. Many delegates were weeping openly. Others sat frozen, unable to process what they had witnessed. The choice before them, Torres turned off the display. The chamber's normal lighting returned, harsh and clinical after the darkness of the recordings. She looked around at the assembled representatives, her exhausted eyes meeting theirs without flinching. "That is what we did," she said, simply. "We became killers on a scale most of you cannot imagine. We built weapons that should never exist. We made choices that will haunt our species for generations. The scientists who created Project Nightfall cannot sleep without sedatives. The engineers who designed the hive mind weapon weep every day for what they built. The families of the crews who died in Operation Last Dawn will carry that grief forever." She paused, gathering her strength for what came next. "But because we did these things, humanity survived. Because we became monsters, the devourers were stopped before they could reach your worlds, your families, your children." Ambassador Theron of the Peaceful Coalition stood, his gentle species known throughout the galaxy for their absolute commitment to nonviolence. "Commander Torres, we understand your desperate situation. But surely there must have been another way. Violence on this scale cannot be the only answer." Torres looked at him for a long moment. "Ambassador Theron, your species evolved on a world with no predators. You have never known hunger, never experienced violence. Your greatest conflict in recorded history was a disagreement about philosophy that you resolved through meditation. I respect your commitment to peace. It is beautiful. But it exists only because you have never faced something that wants to eat you." She stepped closer to the edge of the platform. "We sent the devourers messages of peace. We offered to share our worlds, our resources, our knowledge. They responded by harvesting the diplomats we sent. They processed their bodies into biomass and grew more devourers. There was no negotiation possible. There was only survival or extinction. Before anyone could respond, the chamber's alert systems activated. A technician rushed to Chancellor Mordix, whispering urgently. The Chancellor's face went pale. "Commander Torres," he said, his voice barely controlled. "Our long-range sensors have detected multiple energy signatures at the edge of this system. The signatures match your devourer data. They are approaching our location." The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Representatives began screaming. Some ran for the exits. Others collapsed in their seats. The organized assembly dissolved into chaos within seconds. Torres remained perfectly still on the central platform. When she spoke, her voice was calm, almost gentle. "This is why we came. Not for your approval. Not for your gratitude. We came because we knew this might happen. We came because we did not want to face it alone again." She looked up at Chancellor Mordix. "The question before you is simple. Will you accept help from monsters who saved your galaxy? Or will you face the Devourers with your principles intact and your civilizations destroyed? Chancellor Mordex stared at the human commander for a long moment. Then he made his decision. Activate all defense protocols. Contact every fleet within range. And Commander Torres, your species is hereby granted emergency partnership status with the Galactic Assembly. What do you need? Torres allowed herself a small, tired smile. Time to prepare, Chancellor? The Devourers have given us perhaps 6 hours before they reach this station. We need to use every second. Humanity has fought this enemy before. We know their weaknesses. We know how to hurt them, but we cannot do it alone anymore. Over the next hours, the galaxy transformed. Human military advisors worked with assembly defense forces, sharing tactics learned through blood and sacrifice. Human weapons technology, carefully controlled but desperately needed, was transferred to assembly ships. Ancient enemies within the assembly put aside their differences to face a threat none of them had believed existed until that day. Commander, Torres stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Ed's defiant, and watched the preparations unfold. Her ships, blood-stained and battle-scarred, took positions alongside pristine assembly vessels. Together they would face the darkness. An aide approached her quietly. Commander, the crew wants to know. After everything we have been through, after all we have lost, why are we fighting for them? They rejected us. They ignored us when we needed help. Torres looked at the young officer, seeing in her face the same exhaustion that all humans carried now. We fight because it is the right thing to do. We fight because no species, no matter how they treated us, deserves what the Devourers do. We fight because we are human and humans protect the innocent, even when the innocent did not protect us. She turned back to the view screen, where the distant energy signatures grew larger with each passing moment. And we fight because we have learned something important. Survival is not enough. We must survive with our humanity intact. We became monsters to defeat monsters, but we do not have to remain monsters forever. The battle alarms began to sound. The Devourers had arrived. But this time, humanity did not stand alone. This time, the galaxy stood together. And together, they would prove that civilization, cooperation, and hope were stronger than hunger, adaptation. And darkness, Commander Elena Torres gave the order that would begin the battle for galactic survival. All ships, this is Torres. Remember why we fight. Remember who we protect. And remember that we have beaten them before. We will beat them again. For humanity, for the assembly, for everyone. The blood-stained fleet moved forward, leading the way into the darkness one more time. But now, lights followed behind them. Thousands of lights from hundreds of species, united at last against a common enemy. The galaxy had learned its lesson. When one species faced extinction, all species were threatened. When one civilization asked for help, all civilizations must answer. The war had changed humanity. Now humanity would change the galaxy. The age of isolation was over. The age of cooperation had begun, forged in fire and sealed in blood, but built to last forever.